I came back after 2 weeks of being on Israel.
Had you been diagnosed by then of having bipolar?
No. So this was my first ever like manic episode. And I came back and I was like, why am I being taken off Israel? I didn't understand it because to me, I'm just like, happy, yay, this is amazing. I didn't understand what was happening. And then I came home and I met with a psychiatrist and they were like, we're going to monitor you. And so I came down after sort of 6 weeks or so back at home. My mood was normal because in bipolar, you can go from depression to normal to mania. If you're not medicated, it's like a roller coaster like that.
Were you religious at that stage?
Yeah. As in modern Orthodox. Yeah. But even though like I wore trousers and kind of was modern Orthodox and all that stuff, it still was instilled in everyone in my youth group. Like you've got to be a good girl. You don't do that with people. Mm-hmm. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is that teenagers at that time did not understand what was happening to me. So I got labeled a lot of things. People were very like threatened by my manic self.
Yes, do you think going away, like doing such a drastic thing, like going away to a different country by yourself, do you think that could have triggered some of it, or was it not related?
I think I wasn't sleeping well, so that's a trigger. It was very hot. Anyway, as a teenager, you're more kind of like risky, like you take risks. You're away with like people your age, with boys your age or girls your age, whatever, and there's more freedom. And I think that, it just made me really ill.
Welcome to our brand new studio. Before we start this episode, I just want to let you know that we're going to be talking about subjects which are for adult audiences only. Hi everyone, welcome to Between the Lines, powered by J18. It's the podcast where we talk about emotional health, we talk about feelings, we talk about often the things that we don't like talking about, and that includes disorders and some of the mental health problems that so many of us will struggle through at different points of their life. In this episode, we're going to talk to a guest who I would say is currently on her journey and currently having to deal with something that doesn't just go away. Eleanor Segall, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You are someone who, instead of me introducing you, maybe you should tell us a bit about you.
Sure. I'm Eleanor Segall. I am an author, a mental health blogger. Been living with bipolar disorder since I was 16 and now 37. And work in digital communications. That's me.
Amazing. And co-hosting this episode.
Hi.
J18 therapist, also a friend or colour teacher of Eleanor, Tehilla Birnbaum. Welcome.
Hi. Lovely to be on here with you, Eleanor.
You too.
And Yaakov, and I really look forward to this conversation.
Me too.
And I think it's a really important conversation because something like bipolar is a sort of a condition that many people don't really know so much about. And I think it's amazing that you've come on, but also I think it's going to be so important for us to understand what you've gone through, but also, what helped you and how the community can sort of improve and become more aware about bipolar. And I sort of just want to open the conversation almost in your deep end as maybe a child when you were going through that really hard time. And you've written this book that we have over here, Bring Me to Light. And in it, you describe really, you going from the time where you didn't know what was going on to those years that punctuated by the easier times and some really, really dark times. But how old were you when you wrote this poem that I saw in the book that I sort of wanted to read out?
The pillbox poem, I call it. 24. Writing's always been like an escape for me in a way to kind of make sense of my feelings. And I was going through a really, really deep depression at that time. I was going through a depressive episode, so period of illness. And I just felt like the doctors were constantly telling me, you might have this, you might have that, you've got this, we'll give you this pill to see if this gets better. Because with psychiatrists, you probably know it's trial and error. So they don't 100% know, oh, this is the treatment, you're going to get better. So that's what the poem is about, talks about, do I have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, I think it is. Do I have some other kind of depressive disorder? I just didn't know what I had. So that was my way of trying to make sense of it.
You know what? I think it's more sort of powerful if you read it. Are you happy to read it?
I can read it. Speak it out. Thank you.
Because this is like coming from your heart at that time.
Yeah. So I would say before I kind of read it, I was in like a really deep, dark depression. This was like a way of me making kind of sense of how I was feeling. Okay. So it's called I Am a Pillbox. I am a pillbox. I diagnose myself mental disorder after mental disorder. I'm bipolar, have social anxiety and PMDD. The doctors keep giving me pills, chemicals to change my brain and body into someone who can function. But I just feel like a pill swallower, an instrument for an experiment. I must speak out before I am consumed. Wow. So that kind of level of darkness is kind of, shows you where I was at that time.
That is really powerful. I find with a lot of my clients and even myself, when we really need to express something, poems seem to do it.
Yeah.
Do you write a lot?
Yeah. So before I wrote my book, I was kind of writing poetry and articles for kind of big publications like Glamour, The Telegraph, just to really, it was kind of therapy for me.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I think we should just help us to sort of get an understanding of like, what is bipolar?
Okay. So you might actually know as well, being a therapist.
Yeah, but I just know that so many people sort of, we don't have so much awareness. We know depression and anxiety, certain things we connect to more. Bipolar is something that many people struggle with. Yeah,
they do. And I just want to kind of, before I explain, just to say it's very prevalent in our community. It's often a genetic illness that can run in families. Some people have it due to trauma as well.
So I was just going to say, are there two types and how... Do they show up differently?
Yeah. So the type that I have and my dad has is bipolar 1 disorder. That's where you get the typical kind of very manic, psychotic, needing hospitalization type episodes, and also the very suicidal, depressive episodes. Bipolar 2 essentially has a lesser depressive episode and doesn't really have manic. It has hypomanic episodes, which are smaller manic episodes. So they don't usually need hospitalization and they can be managed much more easily. So the reason I've been in hospital twice in my life is because I have bipolar 1 and they couldn't find the right medication at the time. And my dad also has that. And so it kind of my dad wasn't diagnosed until I was 12.
Right. So when I was reading the book, I think one of the things that stood out to me was how confusing it must have been for your father to have had this experience where no one actually knew what he was going through. And he was given the wrong, as you say, pill, that they gave him for years.
Yeah, they put him on Valium for years, which is like a anxiety drug, isn't it? It's not for bipolar. And he never saw a psychiatrist because in our parents' generation, it wasn't, no one ever suspected, it's going to be something like bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever it was. So my dad for 9 years was undiagnosed. And he never went to hospital either. My mum did a lot of the caring for him at home. And we were very little. So in the book, I talk about how I was 7 years old when it got really bad. And then at 12, my dad, he won't mind me saying this because he's a mental health advocate, and hi, Dad, if you're watching. At 12, my dad, unfortunately, almost made a suicide attempt, but my mum came in and stopped him.
Wow. So you grew up yourself, even before you even knew anything about your own struggles, growing up in a household where your father was battling with almost like demons.
Yeah, he was battling really, really difficult stuff. And he's often said to me, the thing that stopped him taking his own life in the end, as well as my mum being there, was the love that he had for his children and his wife. And he was getting intrusive thoughts. So, thoughts like, can I
Absolutely,
yeah, speak openly? So things like, I want to crash my car on the motorway, or I want to jump in front of a train, and they would just be intrusive after work or whatever. But he didn't know how to deal with it. And he found CBT therapy, which really helped him. And he was put on lithium, which is the main drug to stabilize moods for bipolar. But yeah, no, my dad is awesome.
Amazing. So he was diagnosed when you were 12.
Yeah.
And then they realized that it wasn't a regular depression. This was bipolar?
My dad had manic episodes, so he would go out and party, he'd go out and spend money. He would go out and do, standard things you do during mania. You think that the world is incredible and everything is so bright and happy and you want to be really social and spend lots of money and do lots of things. But then he'd crash into these depressions that were, my dad and my illness kind of has manifested slightly differently in that I have had psychosis and my dad hasn't had it in the same way. But should I explain?
So yeah. What do you mean by psychosis? Is that when you said that you were in hospital and he was never hospitalized, or how does it manifest itself?
So psychosis manifests itself. So I actually had my first psychotic episode when I was 15 or 16. I thought it was triggered by stress. So I was doing my GCSEs and then I started believing that I was being abused at home, that I was being drugged, all these things, because obviously my parents would take me to doctors and were trying to give me medication. And I thought, you're drugging me. What are you doing? I'm fine.
Was that when you were in your sort of more mania phase?
I'd call it a mixed state. So it's depression with psychosis. So kind of, yeah. More depression at that time. Mm-hmm. But I started believing that, there was this whole conspiracy, that I'd been sexually abused. And your mind is so powerful in that state. You need to take medication, obviously, to get rid of that. But it becomes like what's called a delusion. So it becomes like your whole life. You start believing that.
Yes, it becomes like a distorted reality.
Exactly. So obviously at that age, I had no idea what was going on. I just thought I'm in danger. And then I ran out of the house and so into my neighbour's house, and my parents were like, this is not good. We need to get her somewhere safe. And I didn't feel safe. So I was telling my parents, I need to go to hospital. And so an amazing psychiatrist that I'd seen got me into hospital. But this was after two depressive episodes and one manic episode that I had when I was on Israel tour as well, which I talk about in the book.
So when were you actually taken to a psychiatrist at the age of
6? My first psychiatry appointment was when I was 15 because I was really depressed and I had 6 weeks off school and I had really bad anxiety and like really bad agitated depression kind of thing. And then I got better, but then I started getting sort of happier, more hyper, thinking, it's the end of my GCSEs, I'm going on Israel tour. And that is where I had a hypomanic episode, so a lesser manic episode, which I really wanted to include and talk about because there will be lots of children going on Israel tour and they might not be as extreme as me, like having a hypomanic episode, but there will be kids going on tour that have mental health problems. And I really wanted to share like what my youth organisation were brilliant. But yeah, it's a lot for a teenager to come to terms with and for other teenagers to understand as well.
Yes.
Do you think going away, like doing such a, drastic thing, like going away to a different country by yourself, do you think that could have triggered some of it, or was it not related?
I think I wasn't sleeping well, so that's a trigger. It was very hot. Anyway, as a teenager, you're more kind of like risky, like you take risks, you're away with like people your age, with boys your age or girls your age, whatever, and there's more freedom. And I think that it just made me really ill, unfortunately. So I came back after 2 weeks of being on Israel tour.
Had you been diagnosed by then of having bipolar?
No. So this was my first ever like manic episode, and I came back and I was like, why am I being taken off Israel tour? I didn't understand it because to me, I'm just like happy, yay, this is amazing. I didn't understand what was happening. And then I came home and I met with a psychiatrist and they were like, we're going to monitor you. And so I came down after sort of 6 weeks or so back at home. My mood was normal because in bipolar, you can go from depression to normal to mania. If you're not medicated, it's like a roller coaster like that.
How quick? Like when you say it's a roller coaster, are we talking about like within days or weeks?
For me, it's months. So
is this medicated or not medicated?
Not medicated.
Not medicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
If someone doesn't take medication, the episodes tend to get more severe over time and increase. So as a teenager, I was having these episodes, but they were like, they gave me like an antipsychotic drug and they gave me something else, but I was so young as well. They were really reluctant to give me heavy medication because your brain's still developing. So yeah. So at that point, I didn't know I had bipolar, and I knew my dad took medication, but I didn't know kind of like that much about his illness at that stage.
So it's these sort of like waves of different type of mood states.
Yeah.
That can sort of, different people will have different patterns.
Yeah. Some people, they rapid cycle, which means that their moods go like this kind of, and that's really difficult to control. So some people might throughout the course of a day rapid cycle or a month, but generally for me anyway, and for my dad, everyone's different and has different kind of genes or whatever, but it's over months. So it's really dark depressions for months, coming out for a bit of normality, and then the manic. If we didn't take medication, that's pretty much how our life would be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so knowing that your dad had it, were you ready, sort of, was your mum or the family prepared for the fact that it could well be that what you were going through was also bipolar?
Mm-hmm. My mum, she obviously, as mothers, you have an instinct, and she could see something wasn't right. I'd been under a psychiatrist for a year. She could see my behavior was changing, and she recognized that some of the things I was doing when I was hypomanic were similar to my dad's, that sense of freedom, risk taking. Your speech speeds up sometimes, and you have really fast thoughts and ideas, and you want to go party or you want to do this. Some people kind of, have, take drugs or drink alcohol. Some people go have lots of sex. It kind of is, it's a difficult state to be in.
Spending money. A lot of people like to spend
a lot of money. At one point in my life, my mum stood over me with my debit card being like, don't, because I'd want to give my money away to the charity and to the homeless and all this stuff. And my mum was like, Eleanor, I'm looking after your debit card because you can't control.
You basically engage in risky behaviors.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So would that maybe be something that parents, carers, friends can look out for, that if a child starts engaging in risky behaviors, I guess it's always a symptom that something's not right, but
it's difficult because I wouldn't want to say, yes, every child with risky behavior then is going to be bipolar. But if you notice that signs of mania, signs of depression, I would say if you're concerned and you suspect it, educate yourself. So read, books or look on the internet or speak to Bipolar UK, who, although they're not a Jewish charity, but they're a brilliant charity, and they have so much knowledge. And a lot of people with bipolar, it does start in their teens. So for me, I was quite typical that it did start, at that age, at puberty. So I'd just say kind of really, if you're concerned that your teen is suicidally depressed and then seems to be very hyper a lot of the time, and you get a second opinion and kind of, but it's hard to know because, as you say, as teenagers, it is such a risky period of time.
Of course, it could be just, they're just, feeling really good in good moods, and we're just feeling very, very magnanimous, and we just want to spend money. But I do remember actually a case a while ago where a person with bipolar actually ended up, they had to sort of remortgage their house because they'd ended up literally going into debt from spending, so much money. And just at that time, he just sort of didn't think about what's going to be. And no one was, the family weren't aware enough of what it meant.
Yeah, you have no sense of risk. Everything is amazing. Some people actually enjoy being manic because it's such a heightened state. I hate it because I know where it leads for me.
Right.
But some people out there will be like, yeah, it's great when I'm manic. I'm like, no, it's not.
I think it's quite common that people with bipolar stop taking their medication because they think that they're doing fine, and then the symptoms set in.
I think sometimes people, I was lucky that I had my dad as a role model. My dad is a stickler for taking his medication. Had I not had that, I think it could have been easier for me not to have taken medication over time, because the medications that we have to take are also very strong medications. They have lots of negative side effects as well as keeping mood stabilized. So it's hard. And there are people out there that will suddenly stop medication. That's extremely dangerous. Say they're taking lithium with the main drug for bipolar, or they're taking an antipsychotic drug, and they suddenly stop. There's physical side effects, the withdrawal effects. They're really strong, so you've got to be really careful. And it sends people to relapse and end up back in hospital in a depression or mania because.
Tehilla, you're right, because I have seen in the past that people when they're in that sort of more the higher sort of manic state, they're feeling great,
Yeah.
and they don't always want to take the medication, which is going to sort of just sort of bring them back down to a regular level. And that's the
Exactly.
time where they stop taking it, and then, then you've got all the consequences of that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an interesting topic in general. I mean, your, poem called Pillbox, which, I feel like a sense you stopped being treated like a person. You almost felt like you're being treated like, something to just put pills into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what you were going to say, and I'm really happy to hear, but maybe you can just share with people. I think that especially in England, I venture to say, people really struggle with the concept of having to take this pill to make themselves better. It's a really humbling experience. And it's hard because, I am pro medication when it's necessary, and I see it helping people immensely, going on to lead amazing lives, successful people, but people just can't seem to see how that could help them.
Yeah. I think bipolar disorder is quite different. So bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, these disorders are sort of termed by the medical profession as severe mental illness. So these are things that are very often uncontrollable, that people need a lot of medication or therapy or time to heal. But in terms of things like depression, some people have very dark depressions and need medication. Some people can come off antidepressants, for example, and be okay. But I think in terms of bipolar, and every person with bipolar is different. There's like 1 million of us in the UK, I think. Wow. There's a lot of us and a lot in our community as well. But everybody is different. But if you're diagnosed with bipolar 1 particularly, like I have and my dad has, you need that mood stabilizer, because otherwise I would be in hospital a lot, I think, sadly, if I wasn't. So
it must have been a big hit for you, like when you got diagnosed and you knew that it's not something that just goes away, it's something that's going to be with you for life. What age were you when you it was decided that this is what you've got?
So I was telling you about before I went to hospital. So I was in the Priory, North London, when I was 16. At Christmas time, they found me a place. I was under the Royal Free, and basically I was in there for 4 months or so. And they diagnosed me after about 2 months being in there. I just remember, there's not much actually I remember of being in hospital, but I was like in my dressing gown. This is how well I was, right? I'm in hospital. My parents are with me. I'm sitting there and they say, Eleanor, you've got bipolar disorder. Here's a book about bipolar. I'm like, I'm 16. How do I process this? I didn't process it till I left.
Had you ever heard about it before?
Bipolar? Only because I knew that my dad, I think they might mention, oh, your dad's on lithium for bipolar. I don't know. I kind of understood that it was a change in mood states, that this is what I potentially had. But because I was so young, like the stuff in the book was all about like, oh, when you're pregnant, you need to speak to the psychiatrist, or when you're, I don't know. I couldn't relate to it because at that time in 2004, there wasn't blogs, there wasn't mental health charity campaigns, there wasn't anything like this. Like this would have been a dream, So yeah.
So did you feel like quite alone and different to your friends?
Yeah. Completely different. Like I became hypervigilant. So I wouldn't drink alcohol. I wouldn't, I had friends that smoked drugs and stuff, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't do that.
Some would say that was one of the positive byproducts.
Yeah.
But it stopped you being like everyone else.
It stopped me being a teenager.
You had to be too cautious.
I had to grow up very quickly. I couldn't really talk openly about my diagnosis because at that time, if I disclosed it or people knew it. So for example, I'll just give a story if that's okay. When I was 16 and I was on Israel tour and had some boyfriends on Israel tour and met some guys I just met and stuff. And when you're manic, it makes you really kind of hyper and want to be with the opposite sex, shall we say, which is difficult. But
were you religious at that stage?
Yeah. As in modern Orthodox, yeah. But even though I wore trousers and kind of was modern Orthodox and all that stuff, it still was instilled in everyone in my youth group. You've got to be a good girl. You don't do that with people. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is that teenagers at that time did not understand what was happening to me. So I got labeled a lot of things, and this can be edited out I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word, whatever. I was called a slut by a lot of people. I was made to feel like even though I didn't do anything particularly awful. But one person as a teenager even labelled me a paedophile but they made up that I had got with an underage person, and people were very like threatened by my manic self.
But people didn't understand. They would have just seen, just seen you look the same as you did before. So why are you behaving like this?
Exactly. Well, my friends were amazing because they took me to my madricha, my tour leader, and they said, like, Ellie's really not well. We need to get her home. So because of that, and
but
because
they realised that this was
so
not
those
you.
are your good friends.
They realised,
Right.
and they knew it wasn't me. They were like, because they'd been on summer camp with me before, and they knew that I was quite a shy, kind of like modest person. And they were like, this is not normal. Like,
This is not the Ellie we know.
Yeah, this is not her. So yeah. So that's a sign I would say people to look out for in their teens if behavior is different, very different.
It's actually interesting. I was reading this article yesterday about someone who was a Zaka volunteer for on October the 7th, and he has PTSD from what he saw, which is understandable. And what he spoke about is his mental health being an invisible wound.
Yeah.
And I thought like that was so, I don't know, just, felt right to describe anyone that's struggling with their mental health, especially with something like bipolar. It is invisible. If you walk down the street, no one can see what's going on for you, So what's that like for you sometimes?
It's really, really hard. I'd actually say though, when you're really ill with bipolar, it's quite visible. So you can see it. But like now, for example, I'm medicated. I'm, 20 years after diagnosis, and I've had tons of therapy and come to terms with a lot in my life, but I still carry that invisible wound because I think you realize this is not an illness that you're diagnosed with and then goes away. This is something that you supposedly have your whole life. You've got different brain chemistry to everybody. I see it with my dad now as well. My dad is nearly 70 and facing, his own challenges. But it's tough. And I think, yes, effectively we kind of have an invisible disability. So if I go on the tube, people might not necessarily know. You can't see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Unless I was kind of manic or psychotic, then they would be able to tell.
Do you sometimes wish people would be able to see and then understand you more?
It's an interesting question. I think that's the reason why I started writing. It's the reason why I went public with my story online. It's the reason why if you Google my name, most of what comes up is bipolar, because I think I was trying to come to terms with it, but I also wanted to help other people. So that's kind of,
It's probably that balance of wanting to feel regular, so to speak, and not being judged the whole time, but also wanting to be understood if, you ever had a bit of a drop in mood or anything like that. And also it sounds like what you're advocating for is to change the world of mental health for other people so that they can be informed and then they can feel like there's a million of us in the UK, as opposed to the only one in
There's
the
a
UK.
much bigger challenge probably in the Jewish community because we still look at someone, let's say, with bipolar or someone who's struggling with depression as in some ways they might be weaker than a regular person, and that is we are part of doing this and J-Teen and all the sort of the things that we try and do is to really try to show that everyone's got their struggles, everyone's got their challenges. But this, for a young person, for you're as an 18-year-old, knowing that this is here with me for life, that's a massive challenge for you at that time.
I mean, it still is now, I would say. There's things like I worry about so many things, like my future, if I ever have to come off my medication because it affects the kidneys and I might have to come off it. What will happen? Who knows? Hopefully that won't be for another 20 odd years or so, but you never know. I think as well, like in the community, it's just what you're saying about weakness. There definitely was that attitude of it was more like this was your personality. It wasn't like you have an illness. It was, this is who you are.
Yeah.
And that's not true because bipolar is a brain disorder, but it doesn't make you like Eleanor or Tehilla or whatever. It's,
I feel like something that stood out to me in the book, and I don't know how you feel, Yaakov, but is your parents.
Yeah.
And I think specifically I'm going to say your mother, because your mother really held the fort whilst your father was struggling with his illness.
Well, she sounds like
She sounds like an amazing
she's
human being.
superhuman.
She's a legend.
Seriously,
Yeah,
like, you
she
know,
is.
how do you feel that having those strong attachments, having parents like yours, made your journey into the journey that, you know, it is?
Because she also had to cope with the years of being with dad and him not being diagnosed for ages. So she had to deal with that. And then to see now her children struggling.
Yeah.
My mum is a incredible person, but I would say for many years she had no choice to be. She could see what was going on with my dad. She was trying to at times stop him from taking his own life. He couldn't work. He was very depressed. She was trying to shelter me and my sister.
Right.
And I feel as the eldest child that probably I did sense some of what was going on because I developed anxiety at quite a young age.
You said that.
Yeah. But my mum is just an incredible human being.
Has she always been like that? Or do you think this has sort of forced her to become someone who she probably never would have become? She
is extremely kind, extremely caring, extremely nurturing. She's the mum that you all want to have, basically. I genuinely mean this. And we had struggles when I was a teenager and I was manic and whatever, but she's like my best friend. And I think that, you know, it's very painful for her. She still, you know, has painful memories of me being unwell, and she still worries about me even now. So
I think that's just the mum.
Yeah.
Mothers will worry about their children forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. I think within the story, I think it's so important because mum could have easily either been too busy or tried to sort of brush it under the carpet.
I mean, I think it was an extremely stressful period for my mum, obviously with my dad being very ill at 12 and diagnosed when I was 12, and then me being ill at 16 and having that period where she'd work, come see me in hospital, and then repeat. Like I don't know how she got through it. Really. Yeah, I did ask her. She said, it's what you do as a mum.
Wow. That's a lot of devotion.
She used to come and run baths for me. I mean, like, bless her heart.
Well,
like,
she goes on the sort of the mental health, you know, wall of fame, really.
Yeah,
and there's so many people like that. When it comes to mental health, you know, you were saying that there's an invisible, you know, but also there's heroes, and within all these stories that you walk down the road, nobody knows what you've gone through. No one knows the dreams that you had and the things that you wanted to achieve and you couldn't, and it was no fault. You didn't ask for this. You didn't bring it on.
Yeah.
And the same with the people living as parents or spouses. They didn't know what. I always think sort of. I remember I once had like a rabbi, and he said like when he's taking one of his students to the chuppah, I think maybe I noticed him once. He was like crying a bit. So I said to him, like, you know, everyone's really happy, and why are you looking like there's like some tears coming down his? And he said, Yaakov, like when I'm standing there, I'm like wondering what's going to be with this family. What are they going to have? What's going to be? What's in store? And we don't know. And Mum would have been there. She didn't know what was going to happen, and neither did you.
No. Having that support from them both, still now even, it means everything. Like you said, the strong attachment is, I don't know how I would have coped if we'd both had it, but I didn't have that strong kind of support and parent that, Also my aunt and uncle as well were amazing and still are. And to have that family support, I think is what saved me, because I think if I didn't have that, I don't know where I would be.
I think that's what we see on JTeen. Very often people are messaging in just because they just want to be held. They just want someone to hear them. They just want someone to tell them that they're a good person, that it's going to be okay. We see that very often. We try to fix their problems, but they just want to be listened to and be told that they're good and that we're there for them.
Well, Eleanor had heard that a lot from dad and mum.
Yeah. So you're very lucky that you have that in-house.
Yeah.
But essentially that's, you know, when you're going through such a confusing period of your life, but specifically at teenage years where the hormones are raging and everything's, you know, changing so much, so many changes that, you know, you had that is I guess it's a blessing, but
I think what was really, really special is that my dad, despite his own illness, he was able to be there to support me.
Wow.
When I was the second hospitalization, which is when I was 25, in 2014, I lived with him for a while. He was there for me. I was trying to do my master's degree in theatre education, and I couldn't get out of bed, and he was just amazing. He's really amazing, and he understood what it's like to feel that low, not being able to function, not being able to do that. And for many years as well, he was an advocate kind of for me. Like, he'd come to my psychiatry appointments and things like that, and he would always say she needs to get on the medication, like the correct medication.
Yeah, he sort of knew.
It's interesting because it sounds like even the psychiatrists kind of struggle with exactly what to give.
It wasn't
each person, or
it wasn't so much that. It was more the psychiatrist and my dad were both like, Eleanor, you need to go on to lithium because it's worked for your dad. It stabilized his moods. He no longer has episodes. You're going to be fine. And I was like, but it's such a heavy medication that causes weight gain. It causes so much, a lot of can cause dehydration and a lot of kidney problems and whatever. And eventually I had to make that decision, but it was only when I then was hospitalized for the second time that I just decided, you know what, I'm going to have to do it now.
And that sort of stabilized once you started taking it more or less?
I can kind of explain what happened so after the pillbox poem, the suicidal depression, which was horrible, I then became manic quite quickly because the psychiatrist put me on antidepressants. And when you're trying to explain this, when your mood stabilizer drug, the main drug, stops working and they give you a high dose of antidepressant with bipolar, it can send you through the stratosphere, basically. And I became very manic very quickly. I was going into London a lot. I started thinking that I was going to save the homeless in London. I was going to build a homeless foundation. And I went up to the Strand because I'd gone to the theatre with my auntie the night before. And I was like, right, I'm going to go here and I'm going to feed the homeless. And I would sit on the floor talking to the homeless, again, like no risk, or you just do what you want to do. Yeah. And then I would go to the theatre and be like, and I've been to drama school, which is true. But I was like, I'm going to be a West End performer and I'm going to do this. I'd bring in my drama CV. And it was things that I would never normally, I'm telling me, I'm like quite shy and like quite quiet.
Yeah, this was like no inhibitions.
No inhibitions. I was just like, this is me, amazing, whatever. 25 and just being like, yeah. And that unfortunately led to psychosis quite quickly again. And had a very negative experience just before I went to hospital that made me even more unwell. And then needed, unfortunately, to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act, which I think is something that not many people talk about.
No, and I think can be quite a traumatic experience, if I'm not mistaken.
Very much.
What did you want to tell us a bit, like why it was so traumatic?
Yeah, why it was traumatic. So when you're sectioned under the Mental Health Act, so what happens is you either have come to hospital, go at A&E in my case, or you've been brought in because you're really, really ill, and they have to get 2 psychiatrists to come and see what your mental state. Now, at that point, I was so manic that there's things that I do not remember happening in the hospital ward. So there were things like my mum's told me that I was pulling what they call PIC lines out of patients' things because I was so gone. Mm-hmm. I was so manic and I don't remember. Your brain then sort of switches off. At that point, they were like, right, we need to sedate her because she's at risk to herself and other people. At that point, the psychiatrist came to assess me once I was calmer, and they decided that I should be on a Section 2, which is basically a Section 2, hold on, I think it's an 28-day hold that they keep you in hospital. So you cannot, it's a legal thing, then you cannot obviously leave hospital. And that was really hard because although I was still ill, I could sense, I was really frightened. I thought I was being followed around the hospital by security guards trying to pen me in. And
it probably in some ways felt like that because you don't really want to be there.
I didn't know.
Well,
I didn't think I was ill.
Safety.
Yeah.
She wasn't safe.
Meaning there's a part of you that really doesn't want to be there, even though you have to be there.
I didn't think I was ill. So I thought my mum was ill. I was like, you know, I was like,
Got the
it's my
wrong
mom.
person.
I was like, I'm fine, I'm good. And then I got taken to a holding ward. It's the only way I can describe it, in St. Albans. And it was an extremely traumatizing time because when you come down from mania and psychosis and you don't realize how you've acted and you don't know why you're in hospital, you feel like my mum had recently remarried and I blamed everything on my absolutely lovely stepfather who would never have done anything, but I blamed it on him because when I'm psychotic, I fear men a lot. I think that I'm going to be being abused. So I thought that I was being locked up by my family. I thought that I was, you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was extremely traumatizing. And I was actually in hospital for another, I think it was 5 or 6 months this time. And it was different because my first hospitalization was voluntary, but my second, they lifted the section after, I think it was a month or 2. But then it wasn't so plain sailing. I went out home and then back in. So,
really?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just thinking about, we were speaking about your parents before, near your mother. What about your sister? Because, you know, I think one of the things that we see with a lot of our clients and J-Teen is, you know, siblings
Yeah, it's such an important
living
point.
in the same house with a sibling that's struggling, or a parent, but, you know, sibling that's struggling with mental health. And I think one of the things that very often that child does get a lot of attention.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I know that you're very close to your sister.
Yeah.
So how do you want to tell us a little bit about, you know, how she reacted to that and how are you guys?
I think, so growing up, it's just me and my sister, my younger sister. She is younger than me. And we've always been very close. I think particularly when I was 16 and she was just 14 when this happened. And I was in hospital for 4 months. I think she found it really hard because she visited me maybe once in hospital, but my mum, because of the way inpatient wards can be, they can be quite chaotic and quite upsetting. My mum didn't want my sister there a lot because she was so young. So that was hard. We were away from each other. And then when I came home, I don't know. I just think she found it was really hard, I think, for her.
Can we talk a bit about the social anxiety, which I know is sort of in some ways connected to the bipolar, but it's also something that sounds like it's really been very disabling for you.
Yeah. I'd say it started when I was after I was diagnosed the first time, because you're like, I didn't know how to cope with the diagnosis, how to cope with what happened to me. I felt I judged myself. So I started to think, oh no, I'm kind of either a bad person, or like, why does my brain do this and no one else's brain does this? And it led me to have kind of low self-esteem. And then that was reflected in social anxiety. So I wouldn't want to be around crowds of people. I wouldn't want to go see my friends as such, not all the time, but sometimes. I was having kind of like panic attacks because I didn't want to leave the house sometimes. And that has followed me throughout my life, I'd say. Even like for 20 years, at different times, my anxiety can flare up and I can have panic attacks. And I think after the last hospitalization, say the word. Hospitalization.
It's a tongue twister.
It is. After the last hospitalization, I definitely developed PTSD-like symptoms where I had panic attacks, and then the social anxiety was bad. So like, if it was bad, I wouldn't have made it here today, you know? So there's times when it's better.
So it's still like does it still bother you a lot?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with it? Like, have you had therapy?
I've had so much therapy. I can list.
Well, what's worked well for you, and what's been helpful?
I had 3 lots of CBT therapy. Then I had, which didn't help me so much. Then I had psychodynamic therapy, which was more helpful because we looked at my childhood and where the anxiety was coming from and the timeline of everything. That was more helpful, speaking about it. And then I found, because I was getting these really bad panic attacks where it was almost like body flashbacks. And I would get just panic before lots of different things. So I started doing EMDR therapy, which for people that don't know is eye movement processing, rapid processing, isn't it? Yeah. Where they kind of move something over your eyes. You like look at something and then you focus on traumatic memories and it helps your brain to process. And I had that, started that 6 years ago, and I've had quite a lot of therapy and it has been really helpful. But sometimes I still get triggered, but you just have to learn how to manage it. But there are times when my panic attacks can stop me from doing things.
Are you still getting panic attacks?
Yeah, not as much as I was. But yeah, there will be things that will trigger me.
Do you have any tips for people? Because I feel like social anxiety is quite a big thing. I think more people than we think or know have it.
Yeah.
You know, is there anything you feel would be helpful?
I think there's things like exposure therapy, which is great, which I didn't mention. My mum used to, so for example, like I'd be like 20 or whatever, coming to terms with everything. I feel like I didn't want to leave the house, don't want to see friends, don't want to go out. And my mum would literally, I'd say to her, like, Mum, I don't know what to do because I don't want to walk down the road because like everyone will look at me and I don't want people looking at me. And she'd be like, well, I'll take you in the car. We'll go for a drive and we'll just go for a drive and see how you feel. And so she did that a few times for me. And there were different things that I did with different therapists on exposure. So, you know, like making sure that it's silly things like, you know, I'd be scared to walk down the road. I didn't want to see my neighbors. I didn't want to see anybody because I was like, I'm really frightened of people at that point. So I would just
Were you frightened that you would have a panic attack, or were you frightened of their judgment of you?
Judgment. Yeah, judgment. I didn't want anyone to see me. Even this kind of environment for me feels a bit scary just because I'm like, well, people will see me and judge me and whatever. Right. But that's just the social anxiety side of things.
Well, I think it's a social anxiety. It's also a bit of a social reality. That when we put ourselves out there as humans, we just judge each other.
Exactly.
You know? And we don't know how people will receive things.
Yeah.
Well, that's why part of the work is, you know, you can either work on it and, let's say, gradually expose yourself and face those feared situations and see that people don't judge you maybe in the way that we think that they would. Or alternatively, sort of even better, is to get to a stage where we're almost able to say, you know what? Judge me because, you know, I am me. I have, you know, I'm in my box. I have my life. And why do I need to care so much about what you think?
Exactly. I think mine came from having this diagnosis at such a young age and feeling different to everybody and then judging myself for it. And it was that self-stigma that kind of almost created the anxiety. But I think my dad lived with anxiety for many years as well. So I think it possibly came from, could be, maybe, I don't know, genetic
like passed down kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think the world's changing in that people are becoming more open about these kind of things? Like I was somewhere and someone had a panic attack, basically, a mini one. And then, you know, she calmed down eventually. And then someone up to the mother and said, oh, you know, like I suffered with this for years and I managed to get through. Back in the day, I mean, I don't think anyone would even know what to do to help the girl. You know, they were breathing with her and they were being really calm. But also the fact that people are saying, oh, you know what, maybe we can share. Maybe it's a safe place right now. Whereas 20 years ago.
I still think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
We do, but it's got so much better. It has. I mean, outside our community. In our community, I think conversations like this are really important. And I think so many, you know, young people and their parents are going through a lot of anxiety at the moment. So I think it's really important to kind of explore therapies. Like, obviously, there is a huge waiting list on the NHS for therapy, and I've had to go private several times with help. But it's definitely something that if you can do it, it's really important to try and heal yourself or try and have a therapist that can help, I think.
Can we talk about relationships and like you're married?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob.
Yes, a lovely husband.
Yeah, he is lovely.
So how long have you been married for?
6 years.
And how do you work it out? The fact that you need still quite a lot of support and sometimes you're not always going to have good days.
It's a good question. So when I first met Rob, we met on World Mental Health Day, which was not planned, but it literally was. It literally we met World Mental Health Day. I know.
I think that was a sign.
I think it was a sign too. And on our second date, he had been telling me about his brother, my brother-in-law, that who'd had his own mental health problems and things. And I was like, this guy just gets it. Like it was a really novel thing for me because I was like, he knows what it's like to be caring and to understand. So that was kind of like a big thing. And then because I met Rob 2 years after I came out of hospital, I had been well since I left hospital in terms of the bipolar episodes have kind of gone like this, so flattened. They're kind of like normal functioning is probably what you would call it. And I'm lucky that I don't get like the really big mania and suicidal depressions on my medication. So that
do some people still get that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm lucky. We're lucky. My dad and I are lucky that lithium works for us, but there are people out there that the medication doesn't work, which is awful because their lives are completely ruined. And I don't know. So going back to Rob, I met Rob. I was really scared because obviously 2 years before I'd been sectioned, and I was like, people are going to really judge me. Like, how is this going to work? But it was really easy with Rob, and he's always been very supportive. And I support him. I think it's both ways. And yes, there are times kind of where I'm more anxious, where I can't maybe socialize as much or go out as much. But I work from home and I do kind of attend therapy. And there are things that I do to try and keep myself well, take my medication on time, things like that. But it's, in truth, Rob has never seen me very, very ill. Thank God. Because that means that he knows me for me. But I do worry, and he knows I worry about this, so I don't mind saying it. I do worry about if I got ill in the future, how he would cope seeing me, the ill version of myself, because it's not a pretty sight. And it does worry me, but I guess he knows about it. I was very upfront with him from the beginning. And I slowly disclosed that I had been in hospital and this is what happened. But he really didn't like bat an eyelid too much.
Right.
Amazing,
he was
amazing.
like, he's such a, I mean, look, I think because, you know, with his brother having his own issues and stuff, he was just a bit more worldly than other people, I think. So I'm very lucky to have Rob. Yeah, he's supporting me when I was writing my book, as well as we were getting married. I think my book came out a month or two after we got married. So
no, really, because I think people. I mean, I've definitely had people call me and say, you know, they're looking for a shidduch for their son and their daughter, but there's bipolar in the family.
Yes,
like you're a great example of where you're making relationship work. What would you say to parents that are worried about committing their children to relationships where?
It really depends on the family. Yeah, it really depends. It depends on the family support. Like you said, attachment is a big deal. The family's relationships with each other and how they care and support. But it's also about the understanding that they have of their condition. And I'll just give you as an example. When I was 21, I was living with my cousins in Golders Green for the year. I was at university. And my host, very kindly, she didn't tell me, but she spoke to a shadchan in Golders Green. And she was like, I've got a really lovely girl. Like, are there any guys for her? And then she let slip, but she's been diagnosed with bipolar. And the shadchan went, no, not setting her up with anybody, which I think is probably common. I don't know how common this is now, but there is
a pretty big stigma.
Well, you have to also remember there is a greater percentage of, let's say, it's a marriage where one of the spouses has got bipolar. There is a greater percentage. I think something about 10 or 15% of the child then also having bipolar. So it does come from like some reasonable place, but at the same time, we've all got our challenges, and therefore, it's not going to be so easy to find someone who's got a pedigree mental health status with nothing.
Well, this is something Rob and I also have to consider, because my dad's got it, I've got it, could potentially pass it on.
And also, I think we just never know what's in our genetic makeup very often, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show in a specific child. It could be passed down without any symptoms.
We don't know.
At all.
And even if it does show, look, you can see with the right understanding and knowledge, support.
And also bipolar could be trauma-induced, as you said. Yes,
it can be trauma-induced after traumatic event. But as I said, there are more definitely Ashkenazi Jews with bipolar. So it is something I have a lot of Jewish friends with it. I think at least 5 that I know of outside of me and my dad.
Oh, wow.
I also have relatives in America with it, and I have other relatives here with it that I won't name. But yes, it definitely is a biological thing for us. It's just kind of how it manifests. It's interesting.
But I think I think there's probably a lot of people with it but they may not always, the children may not always know. I remember once seeing somebody, and she was, I think, about 22 at the time, and she'd only found out about 3 or 4 years earlier that her father has bipolar, and the greatest sadness was that she grew up like she never knew when she's going to come home, which mood is her father going to be in, and sometimes he did. Like, we now understand it. Also, you've helped us now. We now understand why it could be that the father during his manic stage would have been going out of the house and coming back. Maybe it was, his behavior was just irrational. She didn't understand that, and she wished her one wish was, why didn't they tell her earlier?
I assumed to protect her, probably, but it would have been good maybe when she was of an age to understand it, to explain it. I think, please God, if we have children, I would want to just explain, if they see me taking medication, it's for mummy's brain or whatever. So
yeah,
it's important, I think.
I mean, you were growing up whilst your father was struggling with this. So as you said, your mother tried to cover it up, but there's kind of like an innate knowledge of something's going on here.
Yeah, as I said, I had anxiety at a young age. My parents divorced when I was 24-ish. They just weren't happy together anymore, and then my mum remarried the year before my second time in hospital. But yeah,
right,
yeah.
But I hear there's a way to give it over, which doesn't sound so scary, but which also explains it to some degree. And I think that's always the question, do we share, do we not share, how much do we share with anything?
There are
any kind of traumatic experience or event.
There are children's books about bipolar out there, so people have little clouds, and it's like a happy cloud or a sad cloud. So there are books out there that you can explain to your child about it, and I guess it's just whatever's age appropriate.
For sure. But imagine, let's say, even that happy cloud and sad cloud. Imagine like a child's brought up, they come home, and mum says, let's say, well, dad's in his sad cloud at the moment, so don't worry if he's not around or he's in his room. That already gives the child, they don't have to feel that it's their fault, and they understand some. You don't have to give a full biology of exactly what's going on, but at least some sort of information. Because
my mum, she would just say, "Oh, daddy's sleeping," when he was very depressed, because he didn't want to be around during the day, us. So that was quite, I think, hard. But
then he was sleeping for hours a day. So sleeping is something as a child to be, you do at night, or if you're a bit tired during the day. But something,
I'm sure,
must clock on.
Yeah, I'm sure subconsciously there was a lot of anxiety and things growing up with that.
Sure.
But I was lucky that my parents explained it to me. They were really open, and we're quite a medical family. So my aunt's a GP, for example. So everything was kind of explained to me quite young, and obviously going through it myself as well.
So I've got a couple of things and then I think, to close off with. My first thing is that where does the future hold for? I don't know, you've definitely had ambition at one point to go into drama and acting, and you've also been a teacher and assistant.
Yeah.
You've done huge advocacy for mental health. What's next?
So I'm working in digital communications for a Holocaust theatre company right now, which is really great. I don't want to be an actress as kind of my career for many reasons, but I think I'd love to write another book.
You wrote beautifully, so we should definitely do that.
And you can get it on Amazon, everyone.
Yeah,
it's on Amazon, possibly also Waterstones, but mainly Amazon. I'd love to write another book. I would love just to help more people understand bipolar and know that it's not the end of your life, because it can feel like it. It really can feel like it, but it isn't. If you find recovery, there is hope out there.
I just got goosebumps hearing that, because I feel like when you get a diagnosis like that, you can probably feel like this is the end of my life.
Yes.
I'm sure there were times when you did wonder, but look at you. You're doing so much for the world and for yourself. So here's to everyone that it's not. It's a future.
Absolutely. And I want to close on that note, Tehilla. Another excerpt from the book, in a way it struck me also. It was the same sort of idea. You wrote in the book that you were going. I think you were sitting in a taxi when you were at sort of your most psychotic phase, and at that time you said you're sitting there. You turned to the ambulance driver and you said, and I'm reading it here. You said, "I will be the Nelson Mandela of the mental health world. I am going to help other patients who are locked in hospital like me. I'm going to make a change and get us out. The driver, a kind man with twinkly eyes, smiled at me and said, I'm sure you will. And as I read that, I was thinking, I don't know if you're the Nelson Mandela. That I don't know. But there's no doubt about it. You sitting here and talking and what you've done already and what you will, I have no doubt you will do with Ralph together.
Wow.
What you said there actually is the reality. You are inspiring and helping many people.
Thank you so much. As you can see, I was very high when I said that, but I did mean it.
You mean that,
Except the Nelson Mandela bit.
And you're doing it.
There's a part of you that did, and there's a part of you that actually maybe that was how you went on along your journey. There was always that feeling, deep down of, I'm going to make this different for other people, even though at times you probably couldn't think outside of what you were going through.
So I want to share one thing, if it's okay, that I haven't told you yet, which is that when I was really, really depressed when I was 24, I used to journal quite a bit, and I drew a picture of a hand, and I envisioned like this helpline to help teens and stuff. And that's the reason why I reached out on social media, because I was like, you're doing that. Wow. That's what I had wanted to do, but it was created by you guys. So yeah, that's kind of why I reached out.
Well, thank you. Well, you've given us all food for thought, understanding as well, of something that needs to be understood. So, but also inspiration to show that, it doesn't have to be, it's not you. You can see it's something that you have, but it's not you. Tehilla, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Very, very much inspired.
Eleanor, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you so much. We've discussed some heavy subjects which might be triggering. If you're a young adult, know that J-Teen is there if you want to discuss anything. Our number is 07860 058 823, or the phone number 0800 915 4646. If you're an older adult, the helpline number is 0330 127 3333.